I said product backlog, refinement, an activity, not an event. Can
Yeah,
anybody tell
maybe
here? It's a
Yeah.
because everyone has to actively participate in this particular event, because event is usually anyone can just attend it without participating actively.
right?
Yeah, I echo what Priya said. It's
Mhm.
everyone has to participate and share their ideas and views about the refinement on the refinement.
Sure.
So event
Okay.
event event is just nothing but it's like a one man show. One person will do something and it's like watching or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah. So events are also done and active. Everybody has to be active. That's agile for you. However, uh, backlog refinement is not a formal event. If you actually go to Scrum Guide and read it, it's not a formal event. Why it's not a formal event? Typically, all the events has got its own time and the time boxes. Refinement is an activity which can happen throughout the sprint. So it doesn't really have a restriction. It should be done in the start of the sprint, mid of the sprint, once, twice, n number of times. There is no restriction because this is an ongoing activity. If you are not this is a preparation, right? Preparation for the coming sprint, not the current sprint. It is the preparation for the coming sprint. And hence, so for an example, if you are actually getting prepared for n plus 1 sprint, you will do refinement of those stories, requirements, and whatever you call your requirement in the sprint n. Yeah. So for an example, if you have a monthly sprint, like 30 days sprint or something like that, and we are currently in March, the sprint is going in March. In March, you will actually prepare for the sprint coming in April. So as simple as that. And hence, it might take more time, sometimes less time, just to understand the scope and details of the requirements that are being planned for the next sprint. And that's why, since it is not a formal event, we call it is an activity. Okay, so there are no strings attached as far as an event is concerned for the same refinement. So you can do anytime you want. Okay, but there has to be some logic. It is also said that sometimes that maximum an amount of time aggregated, I'm saying, should be less than or equal to the 10% capacity of your team. I'm saying 10% capacity of your team. What does that mean? So if you are 10 people, absolutely 100% on the project. And if you have a month-long sprint, so how much would be 10% of it maximum? If you're working for 4-week sprint, 4-week sprint typically has a 5 working days, that's mean 20 days, 20 working days for 10 individuals. So how does that come out to be in man days? 20 into 10 individuals. So how many man days it is? 200 man days. So out of that, maximum 10% is 20 days or less. Okay. If you collectively have all the 10 people sitting in one room, that might be maximum 2 days collective. Is that clear? The duration, when to do it?
Yes.
Okay, good. So there is no restriction on when you can do refinement, huh? Anywhere between the sprint for the coming sprint. So it's a preparation for the coming sprint. Yeah. And maximum collective effort should not go beyond 10% of the total capacity available. For an example, if you are working in a 4-week iteration, that is 20 days, if you have say about 1 week is absolutely holiday, then you must consider the maximum of 10% of that available timeline. For 3 weeks, maybe 15 days. So 1.5 days collectively maximum should be a refinement time. Clear? Yes. So I just have a simple diagram here. What do we do in refinement? Or before that, let me go to understand a phase of requirement, It is a very good blog written by Stephen Van Ruden on scrum.org website, and I really like it. That's why I'm referring his diagram here. However, my diagram is a little bit changed. I'm not bringing in here since it is already available on the net. However, I will also write a blog on this because I see some changes here in the new dimension as on today in 2021 that is coming in here. So what he says here, a stakeholder has an idea, how the requirement flows. A stakeholder has an idea. Talk to stakeholder to find out what they want and why they want it. What and why. So this is the activity of the product owner. Is the why clear? Product owner says, is why clear? Product owner asks. Sometimes product owner may not be capable to answer this question because this has to be understood by the internal stakeholders. Now, who can be those internal stakeholders at this very point of time? If you are a kind of startup and then your team is very small, you might ask your team members. Okay, so that might be an added refinement. This is not for the coming sprint, but this is for the scale, high level. You might ask some of the people. Here, you may not involve the complete team. Was somebody asking a question here? So if that is not clear, go back, then ask the stakeholder, come back. If it is clear, then go to next stage. Is the what clear? Is the what clear? Now, if it is clear, let's go to next step, continue to the product vision. If it is also clear, then go to does it add value? Whatever requirement customer is asking, does it really add value from my perspective as product owner? Okay. If it does not, then go down in the picture below. It says, throw the item away. Don't waste your time on it. Very simple. If the requirement, what and why, doesn't really make sense for your product because you're the product owner, in that case, just throw it. Just throw it simply. However, what nowadays, I have not seen much this particular practice because I'm working with so many product owners across India, Germany, and everywhere. They don't really like it. The reason being, it's really tough to say no to stakeholders. And what they say, very bureaucratic answer is, yes, I will prioritize it. Okay. And in the priority, they priority down there on the product backlog. You just can't see it. You'll have to scroll down and you'll see that requirement. However, that is a really bureaucratic practice. You can actually take it the way you want if you're a product owner. Okay. However, if you're a Scrum Master, you should tell your product owner or guide or coach your product owner, since you're also a coach, that if it is not required, just throw it on in the dustbin or not a bin, which is not to be implemented right now. Okay. So whichever practice you follow, that's okay. If it adds value, if it's yes, then write a product backlog item for that particular requirement. Okay, so this is how the requirement flows typically in the horizontal channel, which is not for the team, but the channel which is typically with the management, the stakeholders, the customers. Sometimes, if the product is really big, your architect or central architect, sometimes your business owners, these people will come into picture. I have seen many a times developers are not really involved in this particular chain. But if you see the right down square here, product backlog refinement meeting begins here. If the requirement is clear and is a part of the product backlog, then your product backlog refinement with team starts. Does that mean the events earlier cannot be called as product backlog refinement? Maybe you can call it as a refinement, but not product backlog refinement because it was not part of the product backlog yet. It was part of your requirement funnel. Yeah, so you can involve some of the people from who really understands this funnel really, really well there to make sure whether you filter it out to the backlog or not. You can also call it as refinement, but not the product backlog refinement. It's a funneling refinement. However, once we come into product backlog, then the refinement starts. Now, let us see what is refinement. All the green blocks here, what I've drawn, is part of your refinement. Okay, when the product backlog refinement starts, let's understand what does refinement means. Make it finer. The requirement is already there, but make it finer for the people who are going to implement it. so clear that they don't really have questions. So now how to refine? When we start the refinement, the first angle of it, as a Scrum Master, it's your duty to make sure the requirements are so clear that you can actually take it in the N+1 sprint, that is coming sprint. Now, how do we do that? Many times refinement doesn't happen. I ask so many people, why don't you do refinement? And they say, most of the times it's really, really clear. Wow, fantastic. But when we go into the planning meeting, I have seen so many questions coming in. They do not have the estimations also. So for such a thing, what I suggest is let's gather together, Scrum Master, Product Owner, and the team, and ask them the very first question. Hi team, is the requirements clear and understood? Hmm? Is the requirement clear and understood? If people say yes, okay, fantastic. Does it have acceptance criteria and it is really well understood to you, so that you know that whatever you implement will be absolutely accepted? Now, if you ask this question, the first question generally will say, yes, we know all these requirements are coming. Very good. So what is the next question? Is the acceptance criteria clear? I'm sure more than 50% of the people would not have seen the acceptance criteria at all. Now go to your backlog and see if there is any acceptance criteria there. Okay, if there is no acceptance criteria, ask your product owner. You have to give the acceptance criteria. If it isn't there and product owners say that, yes, yes, I can tell you right away, okay, then let's write it right away here itself in this meeting, the acceptance criteria. If the acceptance criteria is not clear and product owner does not know, then I will have a no loop here and go to the white box on the left side down, PO or architect to bring in clarity and write the acceptance criteria in your acceptance. Okay, but if the acceptance criteria is clear, then ask people, is the design change understood? What are the design change that's going to happen because of this particular implementation? Is it clear? Okay. Uh, if not, can we discuss? Many times if people will say that, yes, yes, so what design change is happening? And then people might, can we draw it somewhere on the whiteboard, or nowadays in the online version of it, you might have an online whiteboard. So you can show off the design that is actually there in this particular product area right now. So where all the changes would happen, where all this particular implementation of the requirement would impact. Okay. If that is not clear, then what do we do? Guys, the requirement is clear to you. The acceptance criteria is clear to you. Now you need to know, how would you do the design change? How would you implement this requirement so that it does have very less impact on other components which are already designed? Okay. So what do we call it? We go into spike or research. Where it would happen? Once you go ahead with the refinement part one, you come to this question, design change is not understood. Then what product owner say, hey guys, requirement is clear. Please go ahead and look into your technical aspect of it. So you might do some research in that spike time. You might do prototype at times, because you might have 2 or 3 different versions of, you can implement this particular requirement in that way. Oh, fantastic. So you have 3 different approaches. So study it, try to do a prototype maybe, and then come out with the best approach which would be implemented as a design for this. Okay, so how much should be that spike and research time? You can ask people who are going to take care of this. So Scrum Master would ask people who would like to take this. So say 2 people, Tom and Jerry, are free, and they say, yes, we would be interested. Awesome. So how much time it would take? I'm not sure, but roughly about a day. How about a 1.5 day? Okay. Oh, 1.5 days is absolutely fine. Now, you have to make clear in that refinement meeting itself, or event itself, or activity itself, that what are the criteria that you have to come out. What is the outcome? Out of whatever possible designs that comes to your mind, you just have to check it, and which would be most feasible, least feasible, optimally feasible. You come out with all these three options. Okay. We might discuss it offline with the product owner and maybe the architect, and then decide once you are done. Okay, this is the approach you have to take. So if you have any questions in between, you can come and ask product owner and architect. But we should come out with such a clarity that this is the number one design that we should implement, and you should be absolutely clear about it. Okay, now spike and research is done. You come back, you ask the same question, guys. In spike, these two individuals, Tom and Jerry, have come out with this design approach. Let's make everyone understand about this design approach, okay, and let people agree. Now again, the same question, is design clear and understood? Yes, awesome. Now, is it estimated? No. So let's estimate it. Okay, let's estimate it. Typically, what kind of estimation we should have here? Is it a effort based estimation or size based estimation? Any answers here in the session, please?
Size-based estimation.
Size-based estimation. Very good. And typically planning poker type of estimation would really help. Okay. Why? Estimation in any agile setup ideally is actually made for understanding the requirements really in depth and revealing any aspects that you do not know. So there might be certain people who would be saying that, oh, I don't understand this particular aspect of it. Now, product owner is there, your architect is there. If you have an architect, the team members are there. We will come on one single page and then would like to refine it and make sure that the idea of that requirement, its design, its acceptance criteria is clear to everyone. And in planning poker, we 2 to 3 iterations that happen, we actually do that. So at the end of this, we have some estimation, which is kind of, everyone is on one page and people come out with, let's say, 2, 3 pointer, 5 pointer, whatever it is, you come out. Now, at times it may happen that we have seen in the earlier sprints that it's a 13 pointer story. Okay. And you know that 13 pointer stories are generally, was not doable in a iteration. So what do you do? What do we do? We have to break it down. Break it down into 2 or 3 parts so that it is so small that it can be done in the next iteration. Now, what will happen? Out of 3 stories or requirements you broke out of one requirement, it might happen that the product owner would say, hey team, part 1 is really, really important from the business value perspective or the user perspective. Part 2 is okay. Part 3 is really not important. What do we do? So we go to that earlier flowchart we have seen. This requirement does not make sense. So in that case, you might put it somewhere so that you don't implement it, or you put it in the backlog so down that it's really, really not important right now to implement it. Okay. So now what you have done, you have broken that requirement into smaller chunks, and then you have to estimate it again. You just cannot have, like earlier story was 13 pointer, 3 different stories you made. So I maybe 1.5 pointer, another 5 pointer, and 3 pointer. You don't break it like that. You have the estimation again for those requirements individually, without having some bias, because those are different requirements now. Now, requirement number 1 and 2, you have decided that you will take in the coming sprint. Okay, now it's absolutely clear. Design is clear. Acceptance criteria is final. Okay, this is all done. Now you are done with the refinement. Now, in this discussion, how many times we met? We met for twice. The first one, was the requirement clear? Yes, clear. So if everything is clear, size is so small that is implemented in one iteration. Design was clear, we could do finish in that refinement meeting itself. Okay, then there is no need for the refinement again. But if there was certain criteria was not clear about the requirement, PO or architect might have to go back, maybe ask customer, maybe go back to the drawing board again, and then check that whether it is doable, in this way, or the functionality was clear. If not clear, then check with the customers and come back. Okay. For that coming back again, you will come and meet team, Scrum Master, and we will have the similar discussion again. Okay. If it is absolutely clear, there is no need for meeting third time. If there is need, meet for the third time. Now the question comes to me: where should we have the refinement typically? If you have iteration of say 4 weeks, that is 20 working days. Uh, when should we have the first round of refinement? The question to you all.
Mid of the
After
sprint for
first,
next sprint.
I'm sorry, mid of the sprint. Yeah, very good. Mid of the
For next
sprint.
sprint.
Why? Yeah, mid of the sprint of the current sprint for refining the requirements
Next
for the
sprint.
next sprint. So mid of this current sprint, right? Now, mid of this current sprint, why? What is
Yes.
the logic that you are applying?
Helps for sprint planning for next
Yeah,
sprint.
before the sprint planning. But why mid of the sprint and why not at the end of the sprint?
Vijay, in the beginning, we discussed that this can be
So
done in anywhere in between the sprint, right? Not in the middle of the sprint.
There are
Yeah.
two reasons I feel, Vijay. One, we have sprint planning where we just look at the capacity versus the planning, but the refinement, as we just discussed, it's at a higher level because we are looking at the feature, the definition of done, the acceptance. So that's necessarily not planning. We what we follow is we have refinements in between anytime prior week because we're
Mhm.
ready for the sprint, and the next before the last day of the sprint closure, we do just a quick update for planning. That planning includes just looking at the capacity structure and are we ready to go, or if
Mhm.
there are any last minute changes, but
Okay.
not necessarily refinement has refinement actually goes for a longer duration versus the planning. That's the main thing that we follow.
Yeah.
Can I add something? This is
Yes,
Anuradha.
please. Yes,
Yeah.
please, Anuradha.
The reason why we do it like somewhere around mid of the sprint, because in the current sprint we are by mid of the sprint we have a clear idea about like how many stories we are going to deliver. At least 50% of the idea we have, like how many stories we will be able to deliver, or how many we might push to next sprint. So that gives us a better picture in terms of like refinement, like if there is something which we are not able to complete, or which is dependent on the, which is kind of a prerequisite for the next stories. That's why I feel like it can be done
Okay.
at during the
Very
mid of.
good. Very good. I mean, you're kind of there. So the very first thing, why should we do refinement uh, in the earlier sprint, this sprint, somewhere in the mid? The logic is, if something is not clear and the product owner and architect has to go back to drawing board and come back to you with the clarity, they will get some time. Okay. And then you can again discuss. You might have a second round of refinement. So that would give a breather for them. Also, you would not rush. Second thing, middle of the sprint, why? Because you have already started the sprint X, and 1 or 2 days, typically your developers and testers and everybody is focusing on uh, starting implementation of whatever is planned in this particular sprint. Now, 2, 3 days later, typically you are settled. You know that what is to be implemented, and you are in a rhythm now. Now, mid of the sprint, what happens is, there's no issue in implementation. You are settled here. Now, you don't have really sprint planning and everything is done. In between, there is some time. So now you can dedicate that time for the coming sprint. And that's how you do refinement for the coming sprint. So, two reasons. One is your product owner or architect, whoever is, if they needs to go back to the drawing board, they will get some breather and some time so that you can meet again in between. Second reason, generally development team or developers are comfortable in mid of this, and hence this should be taken in middles. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Yes, you might have 1 round, 2 round, or maybe third round. Okay. Third question generally asks me, shall we have all the people in the refinement? What is your answer from your experiences?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the product owner is the one who owns the product. He is the one who has who owns the acceptance criteria. He's the one to define what needs to be done. The team is the one working on it, and the team needs to be present to understand all the requirements. The Scrum Master, for example, he is the one to facilitate the meeting. So for that, I think everyone needs to be present.
Sure. So by everyone, I mean the product owner, Scrum Master, and the complete team. So what I have seen the best practices happening across, and I deal with a lot of technology products. We are working on the railways. I worked on typically, websites, typical Android products, or cutthroat startups over there. What happens is the product owners typically say that there is at least 1 or 2 people in the team who are comfortable with the complete product. They know each and everything in the product. Now, it is really comfortable for them to sit with 1 or 2 people in the round one, because that optimizes your time. So 2 to 3 people from your team who really understands the complete product and definitely would understand this requirement. And then they say, yeah, very finely, quickly, 30-40 minutes we meet, and then, yeah, everything is clear. Yes, now we can go to the complete team so that we can estimate. However, there might be a first round of questions. If it is not clear, the product owner may go back to users and customers and then come back very quickly. So what I've found, many of the product owners and Scrum Masters feel that a selected bunch of people from the team, Scrum Master and the product owner coming together and having this first round, that is really, really quick, because 2-3 people from your team who understands the product really well, this communication happens really, really faster. Now, if it is clear and these people say, yeah, awesome, I think we can call everyone and we can actually estimate, then we will have absolute in-depth clarity. So the second round, typically what they have is, yes, big bang estimation exercise that everyone understands. So this is the typical practice that I have seen product owners doing, and they're really, really happy with it. However, some of the people, especially if the product is new, your team members are absolutely new, then big bang, having everyone in that session makes a lot of sense. Okay. Sometimes if the teams are working like they're specialized units, and then there are 2 specialized units, this particular requirement falls into one specialized unit area, and the other requirement falls into another specialized unit area, and then there is no typical complexity that would involve implementation for both the aspects. In such a cases, what we have also done is only that unit area which specializes in that kind of requirement, we just call them and have refinement with them. And for the other requirement, we have refinement with the other. So there are various techniques and the way you do it according to the scenario you have. There's nothing one formula fits all. However, the end question, the last question, has to be done with the people who are supposed to be implementing it. Yeah. So yes, this is all about the refinement for you. I have already covered all the aspects that I would have taken. Now I would like to go to questions if you have any.